In fact, I've introduced some of these ideas over the last 5 years, but I think their day has finally come, and we're now getting recognition. We had a recent BBC TV series based around much of our work called The Virtual Revolution, and I think some of the messages that are coming from 7 years of research is beginning to get out to the big world, and that's really what my theme is today, is that we really need to think quite seriously about what has actually happened. The web, the digital, has shattered our world, and yet we're not even picking up the pieces yet to see what has happened. We are still in a state of shock and awe, I suppose. And few of us are beginning to look at the fundamental changes that's occurring to all our lives. Although we all recognize it, but we're almost on an escalator, just going along, noticing change without doing anything else at all. I would argue that, in fact, we have a parallel universe, that basically speaking, these things are happening in one side of our brain, and we're carrying on, treading along on the other side of our brain. And I think that is schizophrenic, and I think it's about the time the two bits of the brain gets together to understand what has really happened. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So it can't get much more interesting than that, can it, really? It's about as fundamental as you could get. Not quite, because I was talking to the landlord of the place I was staying last night over a glass of Golan Red, which is rather nice, I must say. It feeds the right part of the brain. And he was telling me some Israeli scientists have come up with a concept of recreating new parts from the placenta. I don't know if this is the big news, that we're going to live to 250, 300 years old because they now got the basic biological stuff to just replace parts. So maybe my story isn't as big as that one, because can you be married for 200 years? I'm still thinking about that. But in a way, what he was saying about that, when I was thinking, married for 200 years, would you get married later? Would you have 3 wives? What would you do? I never thought about it. But in a way, the web and what has happened to the web has just as big a profound changes as that, yeah? In fact, perhaps bigger. But we can recognize that one because we can think of marriage in 200 years, yes, but we can't see the incremental changes that are occurring to us by Facebook, by iPad, all of those things. It is conditioning us, bang, 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 drip, 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 like that. So, here we go. I'm going to take you back to some of my favorite D words. I think all the important things starts with D these days for some reason, and my name is David. The digital transition, this is a word from the 1990s that has come to haunt us now. All of those that went to the online exhibitions in December in London at Olympia all those years ago, and Ruth was there, I know, would have heard this word time and time again, and we'd have thought, this isn't a very nice word. Digital transition, disintermediation. These are horrible words. But in fact, these words ring true because these two things together have totally transformed our lives, and particularly the lives of information people. The digital transition, everything being moved into a virtual space, from the physical to the virtual, means that we can access it anytime we like, anywhere we like. Yeah, Avi's pool this morning, I was updating myself on my laptop, yeah. And I got an invite from somebody in South Korea, and I'm sitting in Avi's pool up at Liman, just up the road there. Yeah. Shatter, bang, but we've got used to it, haven't we? We've got used to it, but it's changed our behavior, yeah. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. But the second thing is, yes, so it's brought 24/7 anywhere access, and we just take it for granted. The Israelis are mad on mobile phones, aren't they? On the train up, I was going mad all the time. If they had 3 mobiles, they would have been using it, you know. And they all have their special ringtones, blah, 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 you know. And I'm thinking, oh, no, this must be bedlam. This is the virtual world, isn't it? It's an always on, always connected world. Change in behavior, yeah? 20 years ago, that would not have happened. Just 20, maybe 10 years ago. I remember the first mobile. It was a brick. Yeah? You can't carry many bricks around. You don't want to carry a brick around. But those things, and the BlackBerries, conditioning, changing. That's what's happening to us. But the important bit for you and the important bit for me, because I run a big information school, is that to access this virtual information, to be part of this, we need those important skills of information seeking and those evaluative skills of what is good and what is bad. Because we've been disintermediated. You do it yourselves. We are all librarians today. The decisions once taken by information professionals are taken by you, them, everybody, all the time, in terms of is this good, is this bad, and how do I find it, and where do I go to look? Things once only the preserve of the intermediaries are now the preserve of everybody. Do it yourself information has come home on a massive scale, as do it yourself everything has come home. Now, that's one of the consequences of disintermediation. And of course, you have to have the digital transition to have disintermediation, because you need to get away from the locked-in, command-driven, you can have this, to look, you can have it wherever you want, and you can have it in the time that you want it. Yeah? It's totally changed from a command-driven economy to a crowd-sourcing economy. Yeah? Everything we do. So it couldn't be more different. So why don't we think that has a massive and profound change on our lives? Because we're too hung up with the kit. We're more interested. You know the old thing about us being too systems-driven? We're too kit-driven. And we think there's going to be a next one that gets us more access, better access, and nobody is actually thinking of the fundamental changes that have appeared by giving everybody the key to the door. Now, what it's given is given unbelievable speed in access, just incredible. But you know what that speed? Remember we used to have to wait for interlibrary loans? 4 days? 5 days? 5 days. I mean, that's another life. You could be married again or something like that. We always want the postman to knock, don't we? We're looking when it's not coming. In fact, we want to be connected. Being connected beats absorbing. By using, it's just being connected. We must be connected. Yeah? People are thumbing all the time. You know, they're looking. Please, connect me. To what? Just connect me. To you. And of course, we have massive choice. Whereas our choice was prescribed for us, it was what you had, this is what you get, served up in that canteen style. This is what you'll have, because I know this is what you need. And now, basically speaking, you choose. And all the time, choice becomes greater and greater and greater. What is the implication of massive choice 24/7? That's what you got. That's what I did not have 20 years ago. I always say, if I wanted to be informed 20 years ago, I needed to live either in the British Library or next to the British Library. Now I carry the British Library and the Library of Congress and everything on that damn laptop just there, which haunts me and follows me around. Yeah? And here goes a mobile phone. But with the digital transition, we've got much more to go because things are still being fast-forwarded into this environment. E-books. E-books are going in at a rate of knots. The iPad's going to drive it even more, but already the research we're showing is that they're all queuing up, and that will enfranchise students, humanities scholars, and those social scientists who just look and see what's happened to their colleagues in science and see what the digital transition has done and think it hasn't happened to us. It's happening now, and it's happening with speed, yeah? Massively. And mobile devices, I mean, the iPad is just it's going to do it. It really is going to do it, you know. It's just going to change it again and again and again, you know. Now, that's the background. We all nod and we all sagely say, yes, we know. No dispute about that. Everybody agrees those fundamental. What we haven't looked at is the chemical mix when you put those things together. What actually happens to people? Yeah? Well, you see, now this is the tough bit. Is the moment you start moving people into the virtual space, whether it's on an iPad, a mobile phone, through the web, and all the rest of it, guess what? They become anonymous. You can't see what they do. You can't see how they behave. Yeah? Whereas when you're in a library or in a bookshop, everybody, you looked around, you chatted, you asked people, you made information needs assessments, all of those kinds of things. Now, at University College London, fifth best university in the world, no academic staff in the social sciences and in science go to the library. But we use library facilities. But we do it from the breakfast table, from the train, from the coffee bar. Yeah? So bang, all of this behavior, all of this fantastic access, what is actually happening as a result of this? And of course, there are thousands and more people brought in because of access. The library's not closed, it's not open when I want it, and all the rest of it. Suddenly, they have all of that. So there's a whole bunch of people out there who never used your services before are now using them, and you don't know how they will use them. Yeah? So here goes your big problem, is that fundamentally, more and more people you know less and less about. And yet these more and more people use information more and more and more. That is the start. It's not just information professionals, it's parents. Whenever I give this talk, I've given it to doctors, I've given it to surgeons, I've given it to everybody. And you know what? They come up to me and say, I'm really worried about my kids. Do you see how they do their homework? They're just cutting and pasting. There's no evaluation. There's no understanding. And you know what? When they're doing it, they're looking at their mobile, their BlackBerry. They're looking at the TV. They're trying to do this. Somebody's on the phone. And I'm really worried about them. What are you going to do about it? I've suddenly become the kind of, the mentor. I'm going to be on Channel 4 on a parents program in about 2 months' time. I could never imagine me, Professor at UCL, on what have I got to do? Because information has become the domain for all of us. To get anything, you need information. To e-shop, you use a search engine, a comparison website. You need to begin to understand what's good and bad, what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. Yeah? And we're going to come back to the born digital. Most of you, a few of you are born digital, but quite a few of you are not. You're like me. You bring the best of both worlds. But if we start looking at the young, as we did in the BBC programme, you're beginning to see big problems coming, massive problems. Yeah. We said this before, I know. I'm told that, in the original pyramids, there are sort of the hieroglyphics that say, these young people today are real rubbish. We have been saying that, but this is different. To say everything is the same is crazy. Sometimes you get a paradigm shift when things have completely changed. Look, it's been bust, it's broken. The old paradigm has been kicked out down the road there, yeah? We are in something different here, and we have to change. And that's what we've been good at, isn't it, throughout history? Change. In fact, the old is bad for us in some ways now. We have to do that. We're in a new world. And my favourite word, another D word, and that's because I like railways and I travel on trains, is decoupling. Carriages from the train, decouple. That is what is happening, is that many of our information professions, journalism, publishing, information work, librarianship, and even parents are decoupling from the audience, the consumer base, because they know less and less and less about them. Yeah? And that's Armageddon, really. You can't remove the audience base or the consumer base from any professional activities. And as you'll see, so it's anonymous, everybody's doing it, but we don't know what they're doing, but we're still carrying on doing the kinds of things we've done before, yet we know less and less and less and less about what's actually happened, what's unleashed. Now that's dangerous, isn't it? Doesn't that make you think, wow, that can't go on, can it? Well, not many people are saying that, you know. Not many people are saying that. But it worries me. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to think there is a chasm opening out here that has to be bridged. Otherwise, it will just go like that. Huh? I'm not a doomsayer. I think this is a fantastic opportunity, but I think we are all voyeurs watching it as it happens rather than correcting it and actually doing something about it. We think we're doing something about it because we provide greater access and greater access and greater access and better access, because we think access is the outcome. Access is not the outcome. It is what is produced as a result of the access that is the outcome. Can only be. Can't be. We've given access. Great, okay, pat ourselves on the back. That's terrific. We've done it. What about outcomes? What about better degrees, better health, better universities, better welfare, better culture, better democracy? What are all of those things? Isn't that what it's supposed to deliver? Yes, it is. But this sounds a bit grand, doesn't it? Well, I'm afraid that's what's happened to information. It's gone. The tail wags the dog. So we're lucky, aren't we? The thing that we're interested in drives the world. But it's frightening, isn't it? And are we up to it? And can we deal with these kind of things? Now, as you'll see, when I'll give you a little few tidbits of what's actually happened into this world, you'll see that it's absolutely fundamentally changed. The way that we thought people behaved, read, accessed, consumed information. So we've got this millions of people going into this virtual space, anonymous, and they've totally changed their behavior. Put those three together, compound, and wow. Ooh. I'm worried. I'm really worried. We need to manage this. This is highboard diving. And in the vacuum, we're still working, many of us are working on an old, uninformed paradigm, a paradigm that was never based on real evidence base. We now have the ability to build an evidence base. And how many people are doing it? Maybe 2. Okay, anyway, so we badly need to visualize, conceptualize, and act on what is going on. And basically, that's what we've been doing for the last 7 years, is we've been trying to conceptualize, visualize, turn anonymous stuff into some kind of reality, which we can then begin to ask questions about, because we don't even know what questions to ask, because we don't know how they behave. We think we know, and we hear rumors, and we see our children, but we don't put it together in a scientific and structured form. So I'm not going to do it in too scientific and structured form, because it's a nice day and, you come here for a bit of a laugh as well. So, I'm going to take you through it in a sort of slightly flip and visual thing. But just go to our website, you just see we have 7 years worth of data, on every country in the world, on every subject. If you don't believe it, you won't believe anything, because it's not because it's us, it's there, it's accredited. We've published thousands of things on it, we've been around. And people do listen, but they're not taking action. I'm going to South Korea in 2 weeks' time to give the same kind of thing, because people are beginning to wake up, but nobody's doing anything. So I sort of feel like, I don't know what I feel like, but maybe I'll just take my spade and rake, next time, and just give this sense that we ought to be doing something. I hope you've all done the virtual revolution animal test, have you? Okay, well, this was really trying to get the whole thing about web behavior into discussion. I mean, it was like taking some of the simplistic things out. And, we looked at cognitive styles and multitasking ability, and then we looked at how people search for things, and we did it by age and all the rest of it. And we gave everybody names of animals according to, foxes or hedgehogs and things like this. And surprisingly, how many people said that, they thought they were a fox. They thought they were a hedgehog or something like this. And I just had one yesterday from somebody who said he looks like a bear because he's got lots of beard and he's big, but in fact he's a fox and he thinks he's right. And McCann Erickson, who are a big advertising company, I think they're probably the biggest in the world, are actually running this animal test amongst all their employees and then actually beginning to say, well, what does it mean? Why are you a fox? Why are you a thing? Okay, it just gives you the opening to the conversation about web behavior. Yeah? What style have you got? And then questions about appropriateness of style. We're not being prescriptive. We're not saying one's bad or bad. We're telling you what people are doing. Do you think that's good? Do you think that's bad? Do you think that's right? Whatever else. And so, we're using, in a sense, the visualization of the web to kind of get those messages. So if you've never done it, do it. It's quite interesting. Get the family doing it and see. Now, the beautiful thing about our methodology, and I won't go into too deep, cyber website, loads of publications, is what we basically do is that we take the digital footprints or fingerprints that you leave, everybody leaves behind them, when they enter a database, when they use a mobile phone, when they use digital interactive television, any digital media form you leave, it's called a log, recorded on a server usually, and that is you leave a fingerprint. It's reasonably anonymous in the sense it doesn't give your name away and things like that. And what we do is we take millions and millions of these things and we transform them into patterns, information-seeking behavior, and then we try and relate that information-seeking behavior to demographics, age, gender, nationality, subject, all of those kinds of things. And then we profile their information-seeking characteristics, and then sometimes we relate them to outcomes. How do top researchers behave? Do people with very good, those kind of things, get higher degrees, better degrees, better grades, better jobs, those kinds of questions, because everything, search is everything, isn't it? Health, search, buy a car, search, it's everything. So it does lead us to those kinds of things. So the beautiful thing about the numbers is that they're millions and millions and millions. But the most important thing of all, it is not what you said you did, it is what you did. It is not what you thought you did, it is what you did. It is not what you hoped you did, but it's what you did. Yeah? It's an evidence base. Because the problems about questionnaires, especially used first, is A, you don't know the questions to ask because you haven't got a clue of what behavior is there. B, people don't tell you the truth. C, they can't even remember. People do not remember what they did in cyberspace. They leave their memories in cyberspace, and they pick them up courtesy of Google. Nobody remembers. And yet you say, what did you see on the web yesterday? Or what did you think, what do you mean? What did I do? What are you talking about? You talking about email? You talking about Facebook? No, I don't know. it's almost impossible to ask those questions, yeah? You just get fudge. So for the very first time, we have a potential, all of us, you can all do it, of collecting footprints, making sense of footprints, and actually saying, right, then and only then you go with your question, and you say, now that's interesting, nobody uses this, or why does everybody only spend 1 minute looking at that? You have a question. Now why do women behave in that way and men in that way? Why are these Germans doing it different from the Greeks? The Greeks and the Germans, fantastic story. You know their economic problems, and you know the Germans don't like the Greeks. Well, I tell you what, the Germans are the best searchers of all, and the Greeks are the worst searchers of all. By miles, by every metric we can do. Maybe that's the answer. Not financial prowess, but how to find information effectively. If only the Greeks could, they would be the Germans. Nobody. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking, because phone a friend. Okay, right. Okay. Just going to pick out some of the bits and pieces. This PowerPoint will be made available to you, and we've written lots and lots and lots. So I'm not going to make it sort of boringly scientific. I'm just going to pick out a few bits and pieces to show you. The big findings. Okay. The big news, because everybody says whenever I go, especially if I go to information professionals, is, look, Dave, don't give us any bad news. Just tell us some good news. We want to know what we can do. We don't want to know we got it wrong. And the greatest news of all is that there is just such a huge demand for information. You cannot believe it. You cannot believe how much. Let's take scholarly information, because that's something always close to your hearts. And of course, everybody's scholars today, aren't they? You know, that's the wonderful thing. Everybody has an interest. Everybody's a scholar, whether it's gardening, biology, whatever it is. And now everybody's pursuing it because they've all got access to the big fat information pipe which they never had before. UCL, wonderful library, but only UCL people can use it. It gives me a head start, doesn't it? Massive head start. The walls have crashed. Everybody can have their own UCL at the sort of thing. And people are coming in floods. Great news, isn't it? We know there is demand. 1.6 billion annual scholarly downloads. I can't even think of that number. Articles. Publishers told me this. And it's going up by 60% a year. But how? We've been in this digital revolution 10 years. Well, it's only just started. Everything comes along. Wireless came along, drove it up. Asia's going wild. Publishers are not interested in UK anymore. Malaysia, Singapore, India. That's where all their profits are. And they're building universities in Canada, not Canada, China, one a day. We don't even build them one in 10 years anymore. One a day. And each one brings in an avalanche of new scholars. So the whole thing is taking off. Etty sent me, where was that? Was it one of the American magazines saying that cell phones now use more to collect data than they are actually to receive calls. So, I mean, all of these factors and some of the other ones here I've got, and the young UCL, Cambridge, Oxford, we're not talking about rubbish. 18, come, you say, what should we do? Read a book. Book? Is it digital? No. Don't know how to do it. We don't like big books. They will not use it if it's not digital. Yeah? They will go elsewhere. And because there is choice, they can do it. So you now have a whole army of avalanche of people coming in that will not even recognize it as digital. Yeah? On demand. I'm going to come back to the concept of fast information like fast food. If it's fast, it's good. If it isn't fast, it isn't good. It doesn't fit. Now, okay, good news. This has, well, bad news, good news or bad news, is all of this fantastic access 24/7, anywhere you like, mobile phone, BlackBerry, whatever else, has delivered at least another 2 days or a day, a week, to the vice-chancellors, to the rectors, because we spend our time, all the time, looking, searching, writing. And so when you go and with your library budgets and the rector says, sorry, mate, you say, do you know, we are delivering another 30% productivity at this university. Yeah? And we want to see some of that stuff. Yeah? How many of you see your rector and say that? Well, probably if you did, you wouldn't be here, would you? But that's what I say to mine. But we're not good at selling those kinds of things, you see. But that's just what's been delivered already. Now, there's always a slight downside or an odd side. And if you don't think the paradigm has changed, the final bullet is it. Wherever we've gone, we've looked at the House of Commons search system, we've looked at everybody's, virtually anywhere we go, people send, is the big Europeana. Heard of Europeana? The big European sort of EC, sort of bringing all cultural heritage together. We're working on that. The biggest group of users in all cases, often accounting for 90% of all users, are robots. Yeah, robots. Google robots. Yeah, robots, you know, indexing sites, those kinds of things. Sometimes your own internal robots that update the metadata, all the stuff like that. Yeah, 90% system developers and robots, okay, are coming in. And Google sends robots out about, I'm told, about every hour. And their robots are the best. And they find things, okay? What does this mean? Okay, well, it means that there's not as much activity, or not the activity we thought was going on. And some of it is quite frightening. So the House of Commons, there, 90% of all use of the internet was robots. Most of them, because Google's not allowed in, because obviously House of Commons internet, most of it is their own robots indexing their systems, okay? Okay, you can say, fine, okay, understandable, we have to just take out the robots, or do we take out the robots, or do the robots count, or whatever else? We've got, oh, interesting. But robots, there are pages in that system only robots go to. Humans don't go to those pages, just robots, because they're indexing them. And robot use is growing at 2 to 3% a year. There's soon going to be a situation where the whole system is fundamentally being built and designed for the volumes of traffic created by robots. Hey, that's a good way of spending money, isn't it? More and more robots stoke up the thing, then they need bigger systems, more kit, and all the rest of it just to keep. Crazy? Yeah. Here's the two killer stats. Is basically speaking, what I'm going to tell you is that people spend virtually no time at all on any one page, on any website, or whatever else, and they don't come back very often either. And yet we build systems, massive systems, thousands and thousands of pages, and we all make the assumption that the bigger the system, the more satisfied the user is. Nope, sorry, they bounce in and they bounce out again. Massive choice, search engines constantly churning the landscape, you forgetting where you've been, and most of all, and this is the worrying thing, is, do you ever heard the word information overload anymore? No, no one ever mentions it, you know. And yet we've got more information than we've ever had. But we accept it. Do you know how we accept it? We accept it by knowing that we'll never find what we want properly, that we'll find the first thing that meets the bill, and that will do. Because what else can you do? When we search Google, how many of you remember? It says, you have found 640,000 references. We know from all the work, you never go beyond page 1. We also know that you don't put any more words than 2.2, but you still want to search the world. Tough, aren't you? To what extent? Do you really know that the most relevant, the most important thing is not on page 3? You never look. Why? Pragmatism, acceptance of failure, and trust in Google. People don't come back very often. They don't go down very deep. They don't come back very often. Choice. And of course, everybody's checking. You're all librarians now. Everybody's librarian, but they don't have librarian skills. Everything is not controlled and evaluated. They've got the world. And kids have got real problems now distinguishing between fact and reality, what their mates say, what is real, because where is the bit that says, this is okay, mate, this is facts? There is no bit. The horizontal has replaced the vertical. That is the biggest message. We go like that. And the faster we go like that, the better we like it. We have gone from a world in which scarcity resources drove us down through them to a world in which we're rich and we go like that. Do you think that is going to change knowledge acquisition? Do you think that's going to change our doctors? Don't you think that's going to have a big bang? We hoover through. We love abstracts. They're back again because you can go through them faster than anything else. Viewing has replaced reading. We don't read, hardly at all. In fact, reading is tough. Viewing is easy. Emailing, text messaging, tweeting, PowerPoints, mobile apps are all encouraging us to have less and less of an attention span. All encouraging us to be active but not to read. I went to a conference, incredible conference about e-enfranchisement for the European Union in Brussels. I said, I think I've got some important things to say. They said, we'll give you 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Come all the way from London? It's a waste. I'll give you 20. Came 20 minutes. I knew how to do it. 20 minutes, how we've all changed our lives. And you guess what? Half of the people in the audience were tweeting. The other half were emailing. They couldn't even give me 20 minutes. And you know what one of them was saying? I said, Chris, what are you doing? He said, I'm just tweeting, saying, hey, Dave's here. Dave's here. He's telling us something. Chris, listen, then tell them. But no, and they were all there. You know, they looked embarrassed, but they were all, they couldn't do it because we shouldn't do one thing at a time, should we? Shouldn't we be doing? And of course, nobody does one thing at a time all the time. You're doing something, you think, I wonder if there's any sort of emails come through. Oh, that holiday. And constantly, you're flicking and moving all the time. It's not young kids, it's you. Basically, you're moving because something's happening. There's a mailbox, there's a Facebook, there's something else. And isn't that much more fun than just sticking with Science Direct, reading something time and time? It is more fun. And that's the problem. And we have no discipline anymore. And the younger you are, the less discipline they have. People go online to avoid reading. So maybe reading doesn't matter anymore. Maybe we were wrong about reading. Maybe viewing is the big thing. And maybe we'll build our culture on viewing rather than reading. I almost got a headache thinking about this. But I'm seeing it. You know, it's coming through in all my numbers, all my figures, and I'm seeing it in my family, I'm seeing it in all the rest of it. I'm just looking and I'm thinking, yeah, but something's going to change it, isn't it? Nothing's going to change. It's on the road. There's this concept of digital osmosis, which is this. I can update my knowledge very quickly. The sheer number of books is overwhelming. If I can look at them very quickly, you know, within 15 minutes. 15 minutes is a magic number online. Up to 15 minutes is okay. Over 15 minutes, it's long. I can look at 3 or 4 books and get some very superficial knowledge of what is in them. Nevertheless, it improves my scholarship because in the back of my mind, these books already exist. And we download left, right, and center. And one day, somehow, we'll read them, won't we? When we touch the mouse, maybe the contents will just flow up into our brains. 85% of all the PADS we download are never read. The longer an article, the less likely it is to be read. The longer the article, the most likely it is for only the abstract to be read. I gave this to a conference of editors, Taylor and Francis editors. I said, this is it. And they said, we ask for 8,000-word articles. Should we ask for 6? These were some of the brightest, cleverest people in their subjects in the world. And you know what I said? 5. What's the point if no one's going to read it? What's the point if people are just going to cherry pick it? Huh? At UCL, probably like here, we ask our students, as we just at the moment, to do exams. But they have to write it in hand because of plagiarism and all of the other things. Most of my students don't know how to write in hand, so I can't read most of what they write. So I'm looking and I can't understand it. I can't read it. We're asking them to do things they never do. And then when I finish that and I think this is a pointless exercise, you know, the parallel universes, then I go and I've got a PhD student who's got to do 85,000 words. Nobody writes 85,000 words in this world anymore. Nobody reads 85,000. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Can't we change our scholarship? Is it set in concrete? It is set in concrete, but the digital world is just destroying everything out of there. And soon we're going to be a bit like Stonehenge, I'm afraid. You know, the the roads go round it, will say, hey, look at that Stonehenge. There's 1 or 2 druids there still working away, you know, the sun and things. We don't want to do that. You know, we're going to have to do something about this. And the good thing is that the information professionals have got a lead role here, haven't they? I'll move that one. I'm going to just dwell on this one a little bit because this was trying to understand, get a deeper understanding of what was going on. And we sent some PhD students to search a system called Informer World. I don't know if you know it, do you, Taylor Francis? Okay. And we said, go and do some searches and then come back and tell us what you thought of them. And they said, they came back and they said, oh, it was nice. I said, what do you mean nice? They said it was clean and quiet. I said, clean and quiet? These are not words we ever hear about databases, is it? They said, yeah. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, when you entered the system, you had no sense anybody had been there before. No one was leaving you any tips. We'd just come right in from Amazon where they said, hey, Dave, how are you? You know, you bought this last week. They're friends like you. There are readings and this kind of thing if you're a PhD student. And they're coming in, and they start from scratch each time. Yeah? Because our databases owe more to dialogue of the 1960s than it does to Facebook and Amazon and Twittering it does today. They can't understand it. So I say to the publishers, guys, why don't you say which are the most used articles? Why don't you say that PhD students in chemistry like this, you've got the data, the numbers, gives... Oh, the publishers wouldn't like that. We're steering people to certain kinds of things. I say, but what do you think Google does all the time? What do you think people want to be? They want to be steered. They're protecting their system against the usages people want to make it. So publishers are also in that state. And do you think they've changed their system? No. So what happens is databases are like monasteries. You go into it. And you've gone straight from a party, which is Amazon, into... This is the BBC experiment. And do have a look at it on the PowerPoint later on. And it just confirms, basically speaking, everything you thought of young people. Now, the hope is, of course, young people change into older people and more mature people. But I suspect that, in fact, these kinds of habits, the fact that they're much lighter, they're much less confident in their searching, they tend to use the wisdom of the crowd to get information, and the fact that and all the gurus in South Carolina and South California and all the rest of it say, don't worry, kids are fine, they can multitask, but they're not very good at it. You know, in other words, it's all action, all thumbs, all movements, but very little of absorption and evaluation, and they have so little confidence in anything that they find. Not surprisingly, because they don't even have the concept of a collection. Have you ever tried asking somebody under 13 what a collection is? Final slide. Fast food, fast information, fits, doesn't it? And I suspect that we'll suffer from all the same problems as fast food from fast information. Was it always so and worked with the wrong ideal models? Well, I think we conned ourselves originally. I think we like to think that on Friday when we went to the library and we got those 3 books for reading on a weekend, and then on Monday, because there were short loans, we brought them back. We like to think that 3 books taken out, 3 books read. Yeah? They never were. People looked at the front, they looked at the back, they didn't look at one, they just skim-read it and all the rest of it. So in some ways, we're actually back referencing. We're learning about the information-seeking models that always existed, but we could never see them. Yeah? So we were living, and publishers were living a lie and a hope, and advertisers. You bought The Guardian, you read the whole of The Guardian. You never read the whole of The Guardian. You read the Arsenal football result, the weather, or something like that, but you never read it all. But we always thought and always hoped, because we thought that was virtuous and cultural, that we all read it all. We don't. And the digital is so wonderful for cherry picking. Yeah? Zooming across, picking bits and pieces up in a serendipitous way, putting it together and saying, that is new and that is knowledge acquisition as we really like it.